What up, guys? So today we got a question from Matt who says, Chewy, do you want to see BJJ become an Olympic sport? So I've been asked this question a lot over the last 10 years when I've been doing these videos with you guys. And my answer to this question is always a big, bearded, emphatic, unequivocal, hell no. I don't want it to be an Olympic sport. I don't want to see that happen. When I look at our Jiu-Jitsu, our grappling brethren, Judo, and I see how it's changed because of it being an Olympic sport, I don't necessarily like those changes, and I wouldn't want to see those changes happen to Jiu-Jitsu, right? I mean, think about it this. We'll get into the rule sets and everything else. So look at the rule sets and how it's changed over the years. When you go back and look at Judo, like back in the day, there was a lot of variety to it. You saw a lot of newaza. You saw a lot of ground. You would see upper body throws. You would see lower body throws, like where they're attacking the legs with, variations of what we would think of as wrestling takedowns, but things like fireman's carries, kataguruma, right? You saw this wide array of stuff, but then they started to change everything. They nerfed the ground game, so you get very little time to focus on the ground. They took away the leg attacks. You don't have the ability to do certain grip breaks, like using two hands to break the grips, and you don't have the ability to grip in certain ways because they wanted to get rid of these things, and they have their reasons for doing it, right? Trying to make it an Olympic sport and make it more watchable, I guess. But when I look at it, I don't know, I just don't like it. Now, I could have some of that information wrong because I'm not the most up-to-date Judo buff, but it's from what I've seen. And what I think about is, imagine for a moment that the IBJJF 10 years ago became like the governing body. Jiu-Jitsu becomes an Olympic sport, and the IBJJF is now the head of it, right? And they're running things. Well, think about how that would have changed Jiu-Jitsu. Most people would start focusing on going to the Olympics. That would be the big prize, right? I mean, you would still have other things going on, but the big prize would be the Olympics. And then their sort of rule set would dictate things, right? Oh, we're doing it this way. And you probably would have not seen the expansion of all the leg locks and all these other positions that used to be illegal in the IBJJF competitions, right? It would have been their way or the highway. And they could change it however they want to, and that's how everybody would have fell in line and practiced. On the other side, that's not how it worked in Jiu-Jitsu, right? The IBJJF had their tournament going on, and then a lot of other tournaments started to pop up, and a lot of other organizations started to pop up, and a lot of big competitors started going to other places where they allowed more leg attacks. And so what did it do? It put pressure on the IBJJF, and they said, you know what, we're going to allow heel hooks and other leg attacks and loosen the restrictions up on our competitions at the higher belted adults. It's a good thing, right? And you think about all the organizations that exist in Jiu-Jitsu. If for some reason you don't like one, you can go to another. You don't like the IBJJF? You can go to the ADCC. You don't like the ADCC? You can go somewhere else. You can take your ball and go to a different competition, and we have lots of them. You have EBI rule sets, you have PGF, you have CJI, ADCC, IBJJF. You have all these different competitions that you can do. And you can decide what you want to do and the type of style that you want to compete in. Also, there's all kinds of weird stuff that happens when it becomes an Olympic sport. Like the other day, I read an article where there was a Serbian judoka who, made the cross, right, on his body. And he was saying a prayer when he was going out to the mat, I guess, right? Just very innocuous, just walking, does his cross, right? I might be doing that wrong. I was a Baptist. I wasn't a Catholic, so he didn't do that. But they suspended him for 5 months for doing that, right? I was like, 5 months for this? For what? And it basically was some sort of religious law that they have. Like, no, I guess you can't do that, right? Which I just thought was so strange. Because for me, I think about it in Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, first off, think of all the Brazilians when they get out there. I mean, they're doing all this stuff all the time and point up to God, right? So it would be a big thing for them. But I've competed against Christians, atheists, Jews, Muslims. It doesn't matter. Everything in between. I've had guys say prayers when they're getting onto the mat, and nobody cares. I don't care. Because we're on the mat, we're brothers in arms in competition. We're battling each other. That's what we're here to do. But there's this beautiful thing that happens in grappling where you can have someone who has completely different beliefs, that comes from completely different walks of life, that has from sometimes different parts of the world. You can go in there, you can battle against them, try to take their head off, and then afterwards you have this mutual respect for one another. Right? And I think that's a beautiful thing. Grappling transcends that. We know this from our gyms. A lot of times, a lot of you guys, you hang out with people in your gyms that you would have never met otherwise. And I think that's a beautiful part of grappling. And so instead of trying to hide that, just let it be what it is. Because to me, it's one of these beautiful things where even in 2024, those of us that grapple, we understand that you can have different beliefs than people, and you can still have mutual respect for someone. And instead of focusing on the differences, you can focus on the shared commonality that you have, that shared bond. And so for me, again, I was just like, that's so stupid. He got suspended for 5 months for that? And I even read where I guess Japan is possibly thinking about pulling out of the IJF because of unfair practices as they see it. which again would be really weird. The birthplace of judo saying we don't want to compete in this particular judo competition, which is the big one, right? It would be like Brazilians saying I don't want to be in the IBJJF anymore. It would be weird. And the last thing that I'll share with you guys today is that I've talked to a friend of mine who runs a bunch of wrestling competitions and jiu-jitsu competitions. And he's mentioned to me, he said, man, I would love to do judo competitions. I believe he has some judo background. He's competed in judo. He's like, I would love to have judo competitions. But because of the regulations that they have with the federations, it's not as easy as just, throwing some mats down, let's go. He's like, there's so many rules that have to be followed that the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Whereas when you think about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitions, I mean, you can throw some mats down in an open field, have a ref over here, a medic over there. Hot damn, let's go. Let's get this competition going. And I've experienced it. I've been to competitions where they're literally out in a sort of a park and they're just going, and you can get those competitions going there. And I think that's a good thing because it allows people to get these things going and grow the sport, opposed to having strict regulations. And again, it allows for a lot of creativity with people that are popping up with different organizations that we see all the time. One of which is the Chewjitsu Open, by the way, in case you guys are ever interested in joining in one of my competitions. Shameless plug. You can check the links down below. But yeah, guys, that's it. That's my idea as far as the Jiu-Jitsu being in Olympics. I would personally not favor it because I think that giving a big centralized body, maybe this is just the sort of the libertarian side of me, giving a big centralized body complete control of the whole darn thing, I just don't like that idea because then they get to be heavy-handed and push things one way or the other, and you don't get a say in it. Whereas currently in Jiu-Jitsu, because of the freewheeling nature, we do get a say, right? We put pressure on the IBJJF, they allow heel hooks. People started putting pressure on the ADCC with the CJI. What happened? They got paid more money, and now you have a competitor, right? So it's a different thing, and I like it that way. And in a lot of cases, we do make rule changes from time to time, but in most cases, we allow the competitors to play things out and figure out options. So if there's some position that comes up that's really throwing things off, instead of trying to make rules to ban it or whatever, we usually allow the competitors to figure out counter strategies to beat it. And I like that strategy opposed to nerfing everything and making it more and more restrictive. So again, just my bearded opinion, of course. If you guys have an opinion on it, one way or the other, let me know what your thoughts are down below, and I'll check them out, and I'll talk to you guys next time.